Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Now today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at this young chess star, Gukesh, who just made 7 out of 7 points in a recent tournament. It's just unbelievable. Especially this last game was really beautiful, so I thought we would look at it today. So let's just start with it. Now Gukesh was black and the game started with the move e4. He went for the Sicilian defense with c5. We see knight f3, knight to c6, and now c3, going for that Alapin variation in which black usually goes for the center immediately with d5. And the point is that when white takes your pawn, you take it with the queen. White cannot play knight to c3 attacking your queen because he has a pawn there. So that's why you can play d5 immediately with black here. And now they usually go with d4, and a lot of times they get some isolated pawns. So yeah, white played d4 here, and we can see knight f6 by black, just normal developing moves. He takes on c5, and now black decides to just take the queen on d1 with a check and prevent white from castling ever in this game. Now white is a pawn up, that's true. But you can see that this pawn is pretty weak, and after we play something like e6, it's going to be attacked by our bishop, and something like b4 is not going to help because we will just attack these pawns with a5, as you will see. So here black just played e6, attacking the pawn, b4, defending it, and like I said, a5. Now the point of this is that we're attacking this pawn on b4 for the second time, and he can't defend it like this because we can just take and then take on b4, and he can't capture back because his rook is hanging at the end. This is really useful to know. This happens in a lot of different positions. So here white just played b5, attacking the knight. It seems like a pretty good position for white, right? But the point is that this pawn is still weak. You know, it's no longer defended by this pawn on b4 because it moved further. And after we moved the knight to e7, Gukesh decided for this square. Now knight to b8 is also a pretty common move. But okay, Gukesh goes to e7. He's just going to move his knight away on the next move, and he's going to be attacking this pawn on c5, which is really hard to defend for white. So that's the whole point here of this variation. So here white played knight to e5. And just knight to g6, attacking the knight here, also attacking the pawn like we said. So here white took the knight, Gukesh recaptured, and now the only way to defend this pawn basically is to play bishop to e3. But it's not a problem, black can just attack the bishop with knight to g4. And now what are you going to do? If you play something like bishop to d4, there's probably just d4 attacking the bishop, and after you move, we're going to take your bishop. You have bad pawns here, we're going to take this pawn also, and we have a bishop there, and it's just a really good position for black. We're much better. So yeah, bishop to d4 just doesn't work here. So that's why you're gonna have to accept that you're giving black just a bishop pair here. So now white played c6, but the point is that we can just take the pawn, and after he recaptures, white is still a pawn up, but this pawn, as you can see, and this pawn are really weak, and we're probably just going to win them. So okay, now black took the bishop, gaining this bishop pair, and also giving white another isolated pawn, which is really bad. You can see these pawns are white basically has 4 pawn islands, so these are just really good for black. Okay, yeah, after this black just played bishop to a6, trying to exchange these bishops, just developing, and he just took the bishop on f1. Now taking with the rook is not possible because we can take the pawn here, so he had to take it with the knight. And now Gukesh decided to activate his rook in a pretty interesting way by playing rook to h5, and after white attacks the rook, first attacking the pawn on e3, so white has to defend it with rook to e1, and now just developing the bishop to d6. Now here black's king is of course going to feel very safe on this nice e7 square here, and white still has these weaknesses, like we said. Doesn't matter that he's a pawn up. If the pawns are weak and are going to fall, then this is of course our advantage. So here white just played rook to b1, trying to activate his rook, but after rook to a6, this pawn can't be defended anymore and is going to fall. So after king to c2, black just took the pawn, and black is going to start to put pressure on this weak c3 pawn. Now, okay, white played e4, black played rook to c7, just guarding this infiltration point so white can't easily activate. Rook to e3, king to e7, like we said, this is a nice square for the king. Rook to c5, putting more pressure on this weak c3 pawn. Now knight to e2 and bishop to e5. Now guys, it's really hard for white to do anything because he's just passive. He has to defend his weaknesses. And Gukesh can just play slowly, waiting for his opponent to collapse. So here rook c4 was played, rook e3, bishop to d6, king goes to d3, and rook to a4. Activating like this, attacking the pawn on a2. It has to be defended, of course, with knight to c1. And now just g5. You're also trying to play g4 to keep these two pawns here weak. Especially this one here is very weak. If our rook ever comes to the second rank and attacks this pawn, this would be really great for us. So this is also a nice move. Now rook attacks our pawn, but it's not a problem, we just defend it with f6. Now again, a bit of maneuvering, king to c2, white can't do anything basically, bishop to e5, king to b3, and rook to c4 back. Now after knight to e2, black can now play a4 check. Now after king goes back to c2, like we said, we can play g4 and keep these pawns locked here. And on the next move, black just plays g5. And now Gukesh decides to just put his bishop back to d6 and play a3. So this pawn here is now nicely protected by the bishop, and white is basically almost without any moves to play. So that's why he's pretty desperate here, and he tries something with e5, basically trying to worsen black's pawn structure like this, so we have doubled isolated pawns. Of course, if we take it with the bishop, then this pawn falls. So that's why this move works, but it's still not that great. As you're going to see, black just gets a winning advantage in a couple of moves. Black takes the pawn, white plays rook to a5, maybe even trying to sacrifice the exchange at some point, even though it's probably not going to happen. Gukesh still plays king to f6 to get rid of any ideas. Now after king to f5, white has this pretty check on d4 because of just using this pin. And now black has to go back, of course. Now white goes back, and of course he wishes you to repeat the moves, but you're not going to. Gukesh plays rook to a4, and after knight to c1, he plays e4 check. But if white takes, we can take the rook, and after king takes, this pawn here is now undefended, we can take it, attacking the knight. After the knight moves, we just play rook to c2, we're winning the pawn here, and with that, also the game. So that's why this doesn't work for white, and after e4 check, white just went back to c2. Now Gukesh goes back to c4, attacking the pawn, and after king to b3, black has this amazing winning blow. What move do you think black played in this position? Please pause the video and think about it. So the absolutely crazy move in this position, which wins on the spot, is bishop to f4. Now this is just beautiful because if he moves the rook, for example here, we just take the knight, of course. If he moves it here, we're gonna take here on c3 with the check, and after he moves, well, we're just winning this knight. So it's really beautiful. That's why he has to take the bishop. And the point behind this is that after we take here, we have these beautiful pawns here. And of course, after he moves the rook, we're also going to win the knight. After we take on c3 with check, and he moves, we can now give him a check and then just take the knight, and we're like 3 pawns up here, which are going to roll up the board and just to win the game for us. So guys, what do you think about this bishop f4 move? I think it's really awesome. Please let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please watch more, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.